Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. No, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
Welcome everybody to the live stream. I thought today I would start the stream in the style of an NPR documentary. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and this is
I am
FPV News.
I'm ItsBlunty.
How's it going, Blunty? Glad to have you here. We're going to be talking
Glad
about
to
some
be here.
news today.
This is Tales from FPV Lake Wobegon.
I was
How many
thinking
people
more-
know that reference?
I was thinking more Ira Glass than Garrison Keillor.
Okay.
But yeah, no. Prairie Home Companion. Is that show still on the air? Did it go off the air?
I have no idea.
Oh, I should.
It's been
despite
double-digit years since I've listened to that show.
despite the fact that a few weeks ago you weren't quite sure who Ed McMahon was, you do know
Yeah.
who Garrison Keillor is, and in my opinion, that only improves my estimation of you as a person.
My dad was a big fan of Prairie Home Companion. So
Okay, well now I like you less because it's your dad who listened to Prairie Home Companion.
I had to listen to it. So. Car Talk and Prairie Home Companion. Lots of.
I've often thought that emulating Car Talk, I wish that you could do Car Talk about quads. I want to remake Car Talk, and part of the problem is that I don't have nearly the charisma, and I don't like people as much as part of what made that show great was they just loved all their callers and loved talking to them, and I just am not that person. But I've sincerely wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's a fun show.
Yeah.
Also nice. I'm a big fan of the puns personally.
Yes, they're so good. Okay, now let's try it again with more energy. Good to see you guys.
Right.
How you doing? FPV News with me and my co-host, ItsBlunty, my some would say partner.
Yeah. Sure.
The other day, I'm going to tell this story. The other day, I was signing off with Blunty, and I accidentally clicked the heart emoji, and I sent it. And I said to him, you know, Blunty, I didn't mean to tap the heart emoji, but you know what? I'm going to let it stand. I'm going to let it stand. Welcome, you guys, to the live stream. I'm going to have my scenes. Hang on. I'm going to have my scenes all messed up because my computer monitor. Hold on. There we go. Okay, here we are back again. Checking you guys out on the main screen. I'm going to be reading your Garrett Prairie Home Companion off the air. So sad. Good to know. I'll be reading your comments. We're going to be also checking out the Discord server as well. Boom FPV, all due respect, this is the FPV news, not a Q&A live stream, so we will not be taking questions unless they pertain to the news. But as always, Boom, you're welcome to email me or DM me on Discord, and of course I will get back with you maybe after the live stream. Let's dive right in, Blunty. With where are we going from here? Yeah.
Well, we got a few things to talk about up at the top of the show. First off, we want to let you know where you can find us in the future if you want to get any of our information or contact us or anything like that. First off, we got ItsBlunty.com, which is my website. You can book troubleshooting one-on-ones. You can check out my Patreon or some of my other links there that might be handy for you. We've also got FPV.knowitall.com, which is Mr. Bardwell's website. He's got a wonderful shopping list for you that you can, and you can also find his links to support him. Not to mention, we've also got the Joshua Bardwell live stream clips channel we want to let you know about in case you can't hang around for all these shows or you didn't know. We've got a whole bunch of clips for you. All the good stuff ends up on
Blunty,
the clips
you've
channel.
been busy on the time. Blunty's been making thumbnails. He's basically been running this channel. I just let him have it. And we actually have a bunch of real cool live stream clips. The dumbest thing Emacs has ever done. Yeah, definitely. There's a link to that in the video description. Definitely head on over. We'd love to have your subscription over there if that's the kind of thing that interests you. But that's not what you're here for. You're here for news. And I've got a piece of news, Blunty. A piece of news that is going to thrill or annoy some people, so I'm going to get through it quickly. If you are interested in the whole DJI Walk Snail Fat Shark controversy, then me, Ian Lewis, Matt's Tech FPV, and Chris Rosser are going to be doing an AMA on Reddit r/FPV. The thread has not been created yet. It's going to be this coming Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're hoping that some manufacturers will join us to answer your questions, but they may not. Regardless, if you want to ask questions, and Blunty, there have been so much of this topic spread all over the place. I thought it would be nice if two smart guys and me all sat down and put it in one place. So yeah. Anyway, that's coming this Saturday, so mark it on your calendar. People are telling me that the link to your channel 404s.
Yep, that's why I was complaining about support earlier, because they suck and they can't fix it, and they've been working for days on it. So.
Wait, it's the correct link? It's just 404ing?
Yep.
Do you have another link I should put in there?
Nope. I mean, it's my generic channel link, but it's not.
Do you have a?
It's okay.
All right, we'll take a look at that afterwards.
I
just want to make sure I didn't screw up the link.
Yeah,
I guess
I've been talking to YouTube's support, so hopefully they can get it fixed.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
All right, so that AMA will be this Saturday at 1 p.m. Keep your eyes open on my channel or on Reddit r/FPV for more information. There's one other event that's coming up that we just want to tell people about before we dive into the HDZero Goggles. What's that event, Blunty?
So there's an event called Castle Crash. We talked about it a little bit previously, but there's an event called Castle Crash. And that's going to be in sorry, give me just a second here. In Trenton, South Carolina. This is a couple famous people going to be there, like Bach Grinder and Fly High FPV that you might want to hang out with and fly. It's a little last minute. We didn't do any events yet last week. So if you can make it out to this is a pretty cool thing to check out. So this
basically
is
like
May 29th through
flying your drone at the Ren Fair.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, hang out with some cool people and rip some drones. So.
Okay, all right. let's get to the first sort of real news item of the week, which is the HDZero Goggles. And Blunty, we are obligated to give this at least an hour and 20 minutes of coverage, since that is how much time we spent talking about the DJI Fat Shark Walk Snail Caddx Avatar Dominator last week, and it's only fair.
No.
Oh, no? All right. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna.
That's not how this works. But yeah. Well, we'll talk about it, and we'll have a good discussion.
So I guess we'll start with this post from Carl Zhao. A lot of information about the goggle and a render, or maybe a 3D print. It looks like a 3D print.
I think there's some renders and 3D prints.
A little of both. What do we think of the specs, Blunty?
So the specs, we talked early on about the specs, what the original specs would be back when these were announced. And most of those specs have come to pass, it looks like, in addition to a few more that people are asking for sure. So, obviously on-off sliding switch that most people would want on a goggle is going to be there. It'll be all open source. So we've talked previously about how they've dedicated to go open source, and this goggle will be no different. Basically, everything in the goggle will be open source except the, except that main ASIC. So the goggle will run Linux and will be, totally available to access. In addition to that, we've also got a link in the show notes, and we'll show in a minute the Thingiverse link. There's a Thingiverse link for all the 3D printed parts for this goggle, and that is being constantly updated and added to, and they're just basically giving more and more access and information about those things. So if you wanted to print your own shells for the goggles and or make your own designs for them, that sort of thing, you're also welcome to do that.
You could have they open sourced the whole shell? Have they released that yet?
I mean, they've released the whole goggle shell on Thingiverse, yes.
So I mean, people looked at this original design, and some people thought that there were things they didn't like about it, like it's a little blocky or whatever. And it was pretty cool that pretty quickly they updated it very quickly in response to community feedback, and that's one of the things that really makes HDZero stand out. But the cool thing is that if you don't like this and you have the skills, you could just design your own. And that's really great to see that being put out there.
Yeah.
If you can't wait to get one, you could download it and print it today and pretend that you still have it.
One of the things there you can look at, if you go back to that design real quick, there's rails on there that you can see. There's like little lines on the top front of the goggle there that we can see.
Like right
and those are basically meant to be universal rails. So anybody can make like a little piece that snaps on there. And then there's one on the bottom and the top, and then you can slide anything on and off the goggle for easy mounting and convenience and stuff. So I think that's a cool little way to handle that sort of thing, and makes it easy for people to design something that pops on the goggle.
I'm a big fan of this. So many goggles rely on the SMA connector to hold the antenna, which, I mean, that's not like wrong, but it does mean, especially if you have big antennas and you're putting them in and out of a backpack or a case, that a lot of times the SMA connector takes some stress. And like, I've heard of cases where the SMA connector breaks off the board of like an analog module, and then your module is just hosed. By mounting the antenna to the goggle, it means that you can be much less concerned about putting a big honking antenna on there and just chucking it into a backpack or whatever. Much less concerned about having to like crank down that little adapter with the antenna at just the right angle. It's so like obvious that this was the right thing to do, and yet no one's done it yet, as far as I know. So really nice touch.
Yeah. Some other great things. There's going to have focus styles, IPD adjustment like you expect from any premium goggle, 1080p OLED screens that they're targeting. It looks like they're going to have 90 hertz.
90 hertz.
The goal is for the system to be able to support 90 hertz with a 90 hertz camera that they're going to release. Basically for racers, who want that faster frame rate, the goggles will support it, and then there'll be a camera that supports it, likely at a lower resolution, but with that higher frame rate, because it's kind of a trade-off. They've also discussed before going the other way, so it's 1080p because there'll be a 1080p 30 option as well for cameras. So that's pretty cool to see.
One of the most interesting specs is, they say, by integrating the entire goggle display pipeline with HDZero's fixed latency video transmission, they achieve 4 millisecond glass-to-glass latency with no jitter or dropped frames. And Mo in the Discord says, wait, if you have a 90 hertz OLED screen, doesn't 1 over 90 hertz mean a minimum of 11 milliseconds of latency? And that is not true. Do you want to take a shot at explaining why that's not true?
Well, it depends on when you're sampling, I guess. It depends on how you look at that question, right? Because what 4 millisecond, they talk about 4 millisecond glass to glass, right? And what that means is from the time a pixel is read on the sensor, it's output on the other side in 4 milliseconds. So it's going to draw onto the other side of the system, but it's not necessarily going to draw onto the screen. However, on this system, it will draw on the screen because it's synced to the screen, I believe, is my understanding of it.
Yeah, the misunderstanding there is that you're assuming that the system is a frame-based system where you draw one frame to the screen at a time. And that's the way DJI works, and that's the way analog works. But that's not actually the way analog works. But that is technically analog is also a scanline-based system, but when we display it on a modern digital monitor, it's usually frame-based. But the way that and that is the way that HDZero works today if you're using a goggle like the Sky 4X, the HDZero, because all of those use a frame-based display. But what Carl is going to do with these goggles is HDZero is scanline-based. So it is constantly scanning down the camera and down the screen and transmitting those scan lines. It's not sort of packaging that up into frames and sending a frame at a time. And these goggles will also then have a scanline-based display with no buffering, etc. And then that'll get you to the 4 millisecond latency. At least that's what he says. I'm not sure how that's possible. Is there an OLED screen with a scanline-based screen driver? I mean, Carl seems sure he can do it. Yeah,
I don't know how any of that stuff works. I just know basically the core concept there is that the end-to-end from reading the pixel to drawing the pixel, is 4 milliseconds as far as that glass to glass. But if you're not on that pixel and you're drawing a different part, then it's going to take time to get back to draw that pixel again, right? So it might be longer than that time. But the glass to glass part from pixel to pixel is 4 milliseconds.
Yeah, and I thought that was when I first heard that spec, I thought that was a marketing fib, a fabrication, and I thought they were being a little dishonest and trying to fool their customers, and I was wrong. Carl got on the phone with me a little while back, and we had some discussion about this stuff, and he is adamant that he can deliver actual 4 millisecond end-to-end latency, no fibbing. So that's pretty cool. If you care about latency, it sure seems like this is going to be the video system for you.
Yeah.
Zanakis FPV says, wait, is JB warming up to HDZero? I'm not sure why you this does not reflect a change in my opinion towards HDZero. My opinion towards HDZero has not been cool and is not warmer today than it was. I mean, this isn't even the first time we've talked about this, but if you just noticed, then cool. All right, let's see.
Yeah, so a couple other things we've got. They're gonna have 3 different fans in there, so there's plenty of different internals and fogging support. We've got HDMI input and HDMI output, contrary to what Greg says from Fat Shark. You can do both, and they are.
Well, they have separate HDMI. It's not one HDMI plug, right? Yeah, it's one in and one out.
But Greg also said they couldn't do an AV in if they did HDMI out.
Well, I mean, obviously, so technically that's feasible. It just
you pick in or out
from a business perspective.
I mean, sure, but they're doing all 3. So you get HDMI in, you get HDMI out, and you get analog video and audio input as well. So
yeah, and I think this to me stands out as the feature that really distinguishes these goggles from goggles like the DJI and the Avatar goggles. And I think those goggles are all on a spectrum, right? DJI goggles are the most, at one end of the spectrum, you've got, here, I made you a wonderful product. I hope you like it. And, now dad is going out to get cigarettes and you're not going to see him again for 6 months. And here on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the guy your mom met after dad left, who is a super awesome stepdad and takes care of all your needs and listens to everything you have to say and throws the ball with you. And that's HDZero. Okay, it's a good analogy, and I'm sticking with it. Because, and then somewhere in the middle, you've got the fat shark walk snail, which seems somewhat responsive. But like for example, you said people want an HDMI in and an HDMI out and an AV in, and by God, cool stepdad's going to give it to you.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm really warming to that analogy because DJI is like that, aren't they? And I apologize to anyone with family trauma in your past. I don't mean to trigger you, but like DJI disappears and you got your goggles, and then like every so often they just pop in and they're like, oh, hey, we got a firmware update. All right, see you later, sport. And you're like, oh, well, I mean, cool. Thanks, Dad. But Dad, please come back. I just want to. All right, I'll stop.
Yeah. So, okay, what else do we have?
I've derailed you. I've completely derailed you.
Okay. So, in addition to the analog input, the analog input is not an HDMI style analog input. It skips all the bullshit, and it's just a direct analog input, so there's no additional latency. It works just like you would expect an AVN to work. It also has a special deinterlacer. So typically, there's the deinterlacing chips are separate from the display driver chips, and they're not controlled by the manufacturer of the goggle, really. They're just chips they use. So instead, this deinterlacing will be done by Carl, and it'll mean that there's no jitter. So you know how sometimes in analog signals you have jitter from the deinterlacing.
It kind of goes up and down, up and down,
yeah,
up
a little
down.
bumping up and down. Yeah, and so that should be not present because of this 2D deinterlacer they have.
Nice.
In addition, you can record that AVN just like you would expect. So basically all the things you'd ask for. There's also an ELRS backpack port on this, so you can use backpack support if you need that. And there's a head tracker port in there too, if you didn't get enough already. So
and it's like, I think that the HDZero system for many people is not as good as the DJI system. I know that's going to piss some people off. Like for people who are extremely latency sensitive, it's clearly the winner. But if you just look at the raw link performance, can I see how much range do I get? I think DJI wins for a lot of people. But this is so compelling. These goggles are so compelling that I think that it's going to offset that. It's going to pull some people who would have gone with DJI. They're going to be like, you know what? That 1 watt VTX I can live with it. It's good. No, I like it because they have everything. They have everything. And whatever they don't have, how long until these goggles run Doom? It's got Linux on it.
I don't know what the processing power is, but I would assume not long. Yeah.
They're going to do everything you want from a goggle. It's just going to do it. There's going to be, how long until there's a GitHub repo with open source firmware that you can flash with like whatever, right?
Yeah.
So cool. The hardware's there. It's really good.
I think one of the things we'll really see from this, if everything goes to plan, right? If all works out and the goggles delivered properly and the timeline works out and everything is all good to go, I could really see this replacing the HDO2 or Sky04X choice. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If this comes in the right bracket of price and the right ranges of everything, if you look at features right now, it's hard to imagine a situation where you would not recommend to somebody to spend $50 more and buy
I see what you're getting at. If the SkyZone Sky04X is $500 and this is $550, buy this and just use it as an analog goggle, is what you're saying.
Or even 600, because you're getting a VRX inside of this that's going to bump you up to a digital that's going to be a huge step above that analog that you're already getting. Yep. You're going to get all the support from all the other stuff. You're going to get all the open source. You're going to get all the additional parts onto the goggle. I mean, it's just, there's so many pieces you're getting there for just a little step up in price compared to what you normally get with something like this, right?
Absolutely. This is a very compelling product. And I think it is going to. I mean, obviously, it doesn't exist yet. It is. I don't even know that they have prototypes. They may have. Who knows what they have?
There are prototypes because there's a picture of somebody wearing them, and I think Ryan has a set from what I know. So yeah.
Yeah, but so it has not gone to manufacturing yet, and especially in this day and age, I withhold my final opinion until I see manufactured samples going out to customers, because it's a lot of times stuff doesn't manifest the way that you would hope it would. Nevertheless, standard disclaimer out of the way, this is a lot of potential and is very exciting and could really pull HDZero in a way that maybe the pure, VTX and link technology hasn't yet. So this is really exciting. So far it's been asking people to make an extra purchase to get into HDZero. And now if you can say to somebody, hey, the best premium analog goggle is an extra $50 to have the best low latency digital technology you can get, I definitely think that's something people are going to be super excited about. And I don't know, that increases the install base so much if everything works out. Like we said, we can't guarantee that the goggles are going to be perfect. We don't even have, they're still in very early testing, though. A lot of the production is done. The glass to glass is done. Like, there's a bunch of work that's been done here. There's a lot of work that's already been done. So we're on the tail end of that work, and then pushing to beta testers, and then them pushing to a PVT release. So I don't want to discount the work that's been done there either. So, it remains to be seen what kind of what price it's going to be at, and it remains to be seen what kind of quantity they're going to be able to create. Those are the two things I think that are still the most outstanding things. But they have nailed, they've nailed the feature list, and frankly, the design is pretty decent. The second design is.
And something we mentioned earlier, the second design, something they quickly iterated. They took all the feedback and were able to get out a new design that worked off of all that information and feedback, and quickly adapted to changes and interesting things people needed. People complained about the ability to add diopters, and they knocked up a design that had a faceplate version that could use diopters. It's very responsive to users, and that's what people have been asking with for a long time. And I think that will push this, forward more. As we've seen, if people have access to something like ExpressLRS through the Semtech chip, I think we'll see the same thing develop here, like we talked about, through the whole open source ecosystem. And this goggle is just a part of that, pushing that forwards.
Yeah, exciting. We may even see like a walk snail module for it. I mean, theoretically, that could happen.
Yeah, I think they have talked about before. They're happy to do that. So if they can. So.
One thing I'm not so thrilled about. Go ahead, Blunty.
I was going to say, people are asking about FOV. I think it's 46, but Ryan is in the chat. He can probably confirm that.
Reportedly 46. That's what people are saying in the chat. One thing I'm not so thrilled about. This is what they have proposed if you want to run an analog module. Reminds me a lot of that SkyZone big honking thing that SkyZone sold you that you can put on the side of your goggle. I mean, granted, we don't look so cool in these goggles to begin with, but big honking thing hanging out the side there. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but that's unfortunate. I mean, maybe the community will come up with a better way to do it. After all, it's all out there, but this does not inspire me to, with
well,
beauty.
The question is, where are you going to put it, right? So
I know.
I think the issue is, if you're going to put it somewhere, you're just going to make a larger goggle. So do you use a larger goggle, or do you tack it on the side? Maybe somebody wants to mount it on the rail in the front, set up on the side. I'm sure you could do that with a rail mount.
I might almost be happier putting it on the rail on the front. Gotta say.
Yeah. You might want to have patches up there. So I think it's I think the goal here is kind of for everybody, right? So if you want to do it like that, or you want to do it like this, or however, there's options for everyone.
Well, I guarantee you that, I'm pretty sure that is just like something they knocked up. And if there's interest in making it better, somebody will have it already rendered before the goggles even hit people's doorstep. So very cool. Alrighty. Well, Blunty, that's about a half hour we talked about those goggles, and hopefully that is enough to keep the fans of the HDZero system from accusing us of being biased.
Yeah, hopefully. We did put a link to the Discord, and I'll link that everywhere as well. If you want to go check out in the HDZero Discord, Ryan is over there along with a bunch of other folks, and they are always answering questions, and they've got links to information. If you want to share thoughts about the goggles, all that kind of stuff is over there to talk about as well. So
sweet.
And we'll keep you bringing any updates. So if we see any major updates, or when we find out when the beta tests are happening. So
Time frame.
Also,
time frame? Do we have a time frame?
Last time frame I heard was, I believe, August is beta. Like July, August is beta. PVT, like a purchasable test goggle, would be September, October. Was Carl's last information on that. So I would expect somewhere around September, October, November to be able to order these. Yeah.
It's a pretty. Before we go on to the next story, can I just insert this? Maybe we'll think about it, and maybe we'll talk about it at the end. It's a pretty weird time if you don't own a set of FPV goggles right now. Actually, I take that back. If you don't own a set of FPV goggles right now, you probably don't want to wait months and months to see what's going to bear out, and you should probably just buy something today. But if you have a set of FPV goggles and you were thinking about upgrading, it is a weird time because there's so much on deck. You know, DJI V3 is on deck. We know that's coming. HDZero is coming. Waxnail Fat Shark Avatar is coming. I can't think of a time where it has been less clear, like what is like the right goggle to get for you today if you're trying to buy. I guess that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I said this before the Waxnail release or the Fat Shark release, and I'll say this now. Again, I don't think you should buy a goggle now. I don't really know what position you're in, but I think no matter what, you shouldn't buy a goggle. It would really piss me off if I spent $500 on a goggle and then a new goggle came out that was worth buying in 4 months, because that goggle's going to depreciate in value. And like, I don't know. It depends on how bad you want to fly and how much you want to get in.
I mean, I'm not sure I would tell. I actually, somebody asked me, he was like, hey, I've got this old quad that's been sitting in my garage and I want to get it running again. I don't have a set of goggles. And I was like, look, just go spend $100 on a pair of Eachine goggles, or maybe $200 on a Sky Zone. But like, I wouldn't say take 6 months off and don't fly. You know, I would say get in the air, have fun. But I think if you were shopping for a $500 goggle today, you have to accept that most of the time I'm like, don't wait. Who knows? The future is uncertain. Don't hold off. But now there's so much potentially coming that I would probably say more than ever, I would say wait, because as you said, you have to accept if you spend $500 today, especially on an analog goggle, the chances that something better will come out in the next 4 to 6 months are as high as they've ever been.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think cheap analog goggles is the way to go now for sure. If you need to have something to fly and wait it out. Like you said, there's DJI V3s. There's, we've got Orca digital system coming at some point.
And Orca, haven't really heard a lot about it, but
yeah, at some point we'll see that solution as well. So it's really hard to tell anybody to make a large purchasing decision right now. Yeah.
Unless you just really want a specific thing. Boom FPV says it would suck to see Fat Shark completely unsupport HDZero and leave their previous products in the dirt. Too late. They've done that. They've pretty much done that, haven't they?
Yeah, HDZero is now supporting all the old Fat Shark Sharkbite VTXs, and I believe Fat Shark is still supporting their VRXs, but it's like sort of through HDZero a little bit. I know, we talked before about one they didn't support, and then we talked about it, and then they did because Carl reached out and stuff. So I know it's a little wishy-washy there, but they're definitely not on the front end of supporting that hardcore.
Yeah. Alrighty. Next up, Blunty, we can't go a week without talking about DJI leaks. What do we got this week in DJI leaks? So
I figured real quick we'd review what we know, what we're pretty sure about. So the first thing we're pretty sure about or know we talked about before, FPV.WTF came out with some leaks from the DJI Assistant. This was the original source for these, where we saw the original name DJI Avata, the OcuSync 3 Air Unit, and the DJI Goggles 2. That's where we got those official names and information. And then we also got a tweet from Osita, and Osita confirmed the Avata name. So we knew that DJI Avata was a real drone because there's two sources for it. There's Assistant and there's Drone Care, and there's a drone SKU for it. So it seems legit.
Okay.
Right. So then the next leak we got was a DJI Goggles 2 leak. We had a somewhat random user tweet out some pictures of the DJI Goggles 2 claimed. What they claim to be the DJI Goggles 2 with some cameras on the fronts for a view-through thing and all that kind of stuff. Didn't make a lot of sense. A lot of people were confused about some of the logos on them and stuff and the pictures that were shown. And we did find the original source of those is the next link we have, which was actually just a project from a guy on Behance, and he made a gallery of a demo. So this guy basically made a mock-up design that's not official DJI that people took and then said was official. So just so you're aware, it is not official, and those are not the real goggles too.
Yeah,
yes.
This is fake. I mean, it's not like fake. It's just someone. I guess it's fake in that someone misrepresented this design project as the real thing. In that sense, it's fake. The design project did not misrepresent itself.
Yeah.
So is that right? All right.
That's correct. Yeah, just the user grabbed it. Then we got a DJI Avata drone information from Deals Drone. They posted this information, which was some specs about the rumored DJI Avata, and then some pictures of the DJI Avata. So these appear to be super early. Obviously, there's some kind of early renders if they are. Obviously not super late, and a little confusing. Some of the specs that we heard matched up. I've heard some of the specs used previously, but didn't make a whole lot of sense. There's also that patent picture up there as well. But then we got a more substantial leak, which was sourced to be legitimate from some Chinese sources, and these do appear to be the actual DJI Avata. So here's the above and underside pictures of the DJI Avata drone. So this will be the new DJI FPV drone, supposedly from DJI.
So DJI made their own sort of rendition of an FPV drone, an acro sort of I don't know what to call it, a racing drone, and now they've made their own take on a Cinewhoop, is what it looks like.
Yes.
So what are those, 2.5, 3-inch props? Do we have an idea?
Yeah, but we're not 100% sure, but they do appear to be like somewhere around the 3-inch prop size. Sort of appears to be like a typical like Cinewhoop bind and fly we'd see from a Gep RC or somebody recently.
Yeah.
Something like that, mixed maybe with like a Spark, a DJI Spark. Something
this looks like where the battery goes here. Looks like it's got at least a single axis gimbal on the front. Looks like T-mount props. That's interesting for DJI. These are presumably downward-facing, like optical flow sensors for position hold. It's probably going to have really good position hold indoors. Looks like there's a rearward sensor.
Yeah, likely a lot of the same issues we've seen previously from DJI drones, probably heavier than it'll need to be. Unrepairable, like typically, hard to source parts, things like that,
Probably good long flight time.
Yeah, but it is interesting to see from DJI. A lot of battery there, as we can see from that first picture. It appears to be that whole back of the drone is battery. Also interesting, there's like that square in the front we see labeled with DJI. We're not sure what that is yet. It seems to slide out or be accessible in some way, but it's not confirmed to be what it is. There's rumors of it being like some sort of pop-up action camera or some kind of bay with something plugged into the bay, but there's not. It's not 100% confirmation.
Yeah, because you would normally expect, I mean, if you're going to have a Cinewhoop, I mean, granted the image quality from the built-in camera will be pretty good, but you would normally expect to be carrying something like a GoPro. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They're covering up a lot of the prop, aren't they? Looks like we're losing like
20 I would say 20 to 30% maybe of the prop. If you look from the bottom side, there's a lot of covered prop area.
It's a weird choice.
It seems like they've made the decision for some reason to do that. But yeah, it is odd. You would expect to see more plastic in between just to spread those prop discs out a bit, because the total size doesn't really matter that much. But
no,
it is kind of interesting to see them.
Not under 250 grams, is it?
Yeah, it does not seem to be. I mean, there's rumors that it might be. The original leak said 500. We've heard many different things. The original leak, remember, called it the Mini before it was called the Avata. So there is some understanding that it could be under 250, but it's hard to tell. Similar Cinewhoops with similar specs and a large battery typically are not going to make it quite under that mark. But it'll be interesting to see if they can hit that number.
Iridium in the chat wants to know if that's a bay for a DJI action camera. Plausible. Very plausible. Yeah. DJI Action 2 goes there. Other people are saying that it's not really intended as a Cinewhoop, but more for like inspection. I will say that there's a lot of room for a prop-guarded, small, long flight time, ultra-stable position hold drone for like inspection.
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense.
I agree with that, though. DJI doesn't have any like, why would DJI produce a drone that's marketed to end users that's meant for inspections? Like, I agree with that in principle, but I'm not sure that I agree with, like, why would DJI build something for inspections, right?
They
Like,
tend to focus on the consumer market, don't they?
yeah, or I mean, maybe it could be an enterprise drone that we don't know somehow is like the DJI Enterprise Avata, and it's meant for that. But it feels
Yeah.
too niche. It doesn't feel like a huge market, and this feels like a product that's going to be aimed more at end users from what we know about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they come out with.
I mean, DJI does do weird niche high-end, like that new camera they put out. Like that's this huge high-end cine camera that, like, 7 people in the whole world are going to actually have a use for. Probably more than 7, but you see, and I don't think they tend to do that with their drones. I guess the Inspire and the S1000 are high-end. This doesn't feel like that, though, does it?
I more mean from, like, the marketing and leaks and information we've seen about it. I don't think any of that matches up to be anything like that. So.
Well, the flip side is that DJI sometimes just makes products that sort of don't seem to fit into our conception of their larger marketing strategy than just because they think it's fun and want to, so I guess that's your prerogative when you have 70,000 billion jillion dollars.
Yeah.
I meant to say billion, but then I said thousand and I had to sort of loop back around. It sounded weird. Okay.
And last but not least, we got a little more DJI information. We got word that the V2 goggles are ending, and I got I can guarantee you that this is what happened in the meeting.
Yes.
Whether or not the after effects or anything else is different later, I can tell you this is what was said in the meeting. In a meeting with DJI, someone was told directly the V2 goggles are ending. They were even given some kind of idea of when, but that's not something we could share.
Right.
That is a legitimate piece of information from a meeting that happened.
Well, and after you gave me that and you said, okay, you can share that, I went and I asked Cadex, what can you tell us? Well, God forbid I went to an actual source and asked them for a statement. I know that's not how we usually do things around here. But Cadex said, this is me asking Ivy Xiang at Cadex. This is what I asked her. Are you able to answer any questions about the future of the DJI system? I hear reports that Cadex and DJI are not partners now, that Cadex and Walksnail are partners to work in the Avatar system. I also hear that DJI is ending the V2 goggles. So what's the future for people who own the V2 system, the Vista, and the Air unit? And she said, I'm happy to answer your questions. Cadex and DJI are partners now, and we are producing the Vista. It will not stop. About the DJI V2 goggles, we've been placing V2 goggles from them these days and haven't gotten any information from DJI about the V2 goggles will be discontinued. Normally, DJI informs us months in advance if they're going to stop production. Valid. Seems legit. And one of our other businesses, presumably Walksnail, is producing the camera. Cadex is open for cooperating with many companies. And Blunty, I honestly did not expect some of these answers because we have been hearing so much from so many different sources, some more reliable than others, that DJI and Cadex are on the outs because of Cadex's work with Walksnail, and for her to just come and say, nope, it's all good, really kind of surprised me. Yeah,
I would absolutely agree with that. Something you mentioned on your live stream, I believe on Sunday, I was going, I do the clips now, so I get to watch all those. I make sure I watch all those. And basically, you mentioned that, DJI has lied publicly before, obviously, and not really lying, but like people misunderstanding things or not getting information, and basically the internal systems not getting around to everyone at the same rate.
That's. I mean, I think that lying may be difficult to make stick, but that DJI is a huge company, and oftentimes a person will speak truthfully about the information that they have, and then later it will turn out that they didn't have the whole picture, and something else will happen. So even if you have a relatively high up person at DJI saying the situation is A, it may turn out that once word comes from on high back in China, that the situation is B. So
one thing you mentioned was the encryption thing. We talked about this a little bit. You know, DJI claimed Aeroscope was encrypted. And then so a couple news articles were hearing from someone privately that it was not encrypted with some evidence. And they reached back out to DJI, and one of the DJI representatives said, listen, it's encrypted. I promise. I talked to the engineers. Don't worry. Not a big deal. And then the guy who said it's definitely not encrypted came out with a GitHub project and explained and showed in a public tweet proof that it was not encrypted. And DJI is like, yeah, you're right, actually. We didn't have the right information. That was not encrypted. So
what I take from this, I mean, that's not going to stop us from trying to read the tea leaves, because we want to figure out what's going on and how to spend our, I mean, if there wasn't $700 goggles and every quad you've built in the last 2 years at stake, then yeah, it'd just be this weird drama. The people are like, why do you care so much? But we do care because there's a lot at stake for a lot of people. But as we try to read the tea leaves and figure out what the future is going to be, bear in mind that even when there is an ironclad statement from an actual DJI representative, it doesn't always mean that what they say is going to actually pan out. So these leaks, as truthful as we believe these leaks are, and we wouldn't share them if we didn't believe they were, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting 100% of what will ultimately be the full story.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All
nevertheless, I'm confused now. I really thought she was going to come back and say, yes, Caddx and Walksnail are friends, and DJI, I don't know. Or she was going to say, well, we are going to keep making the air unit. And because that's what they've said in the past, is Caddx will continue to produce the Vista. And I'm like, you mean DJI? Because I don't think you make the Vista. No offense. I didn't press her on that one. But she just came back and we're like, nah, it's all good. No, that's just not true. And I'm like, oh, well, shit. Now I don't know what to believe. I still don't.
All right. And one more piece of DJI news. So we got a little more DJI news for you. We've got an interview from Chris Rosser with Joonas. Joonas is the guy who originally found the magic bit for the Video Out project and kind of started the whole crack into DJI Goggles. And Chris Rosser has interviewed Joonas about the FPV.WTF Margerine project that we've talked about, the Root project. And this is a great overview of some of the information about the goggles, some of the hardware and software, and various information about the DJI FPV system, and some more speculation about the Dominator if you didn't get enough. So yeah.
Joonas is a really smart guy and knows a lot about these systems. So this interview is well worth 45 minutes of your time. Some information in there about the hardware that might be in the DJI goggles and that might be in the Walksnail goggles if you're interested in that. But I think in the interest of time and in the interest of not overloading people on DJI content, we will move on from there. Mad Max says the Joonas interview didn't reveal much new stuff. You have an opinion about that, Blunty?
It's a good overview. It depends on how much you follow the projects, I would say. Like if you're hanging out all the time in the FPV.WTF Discord and you're talking with Joonas and stuff a lot, I think you're not going to learn much. But if you're not, I think there's a lot of good information in there for people who don't. About the P1 chip and the history of DJI and how the software works and some of the upcoming projects on FPV.WTF. There's going to be a GUI, FPV.WTF. Not sure what he calls it, OSD or something like that, but basically the root hack will be available through a website, and then you'll go on there just like ESC Configurator. And you'll go to the website, you'll click a button, and you can root hack your goggles right through a website and install things like the canvas mode hack that will be available and stuff soon enough. So pretty cool.
Nice. Well, for anybody who has heard that the DJI goggles were rooted or hacked and they're like, what does that mean? It sounds like this interview. Or for anybody who wants just a little deeper information about the hardware and the systems, sounds like this is well worth your time. Alrighty. Continuing on, we have, Blunty, do you like parallel charge boards?
Yes.
You do? You're a user of parallel. I have one with my name on it.
I have one with your name on it.
Aw. One of the problems with parallel charge boards is that they're so expensive. And part of the reason they're so expensive is that someone like generally has to hand solder them. Like it's not that you couldn't mass produce them, but they're made in small quantities, and you usually literally just have somebody in China somewhere hand soldering them, which of course takes time. And there's a lot of solder joints on a parallel charge board. So it takes time and they get expensive. But this guy has come up with a solution. It's called Cleanbuild. And what they will do is they will sell you the parts to solder your own parallel charge board. That's the gist of it, right?
Yeah. Basically, I think this is pretty cool. I think a lot of people like the little projects, little solder projects to do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a pretty cool little solder project. It's a way to both help you save money on parallel charge boards, especially if you're in the EU. I think the way the prices work out, I think these are sold in Zloty. And I believe the prices work out pretty well versus what you'd pay for a good parallel charge board over there.
Oh, I didn't notice that. It's not priced in USD.
Yeah, this is an EU website. So I think they're still cheaper than most balance boards if you order them to the US. But I believe specifically in the EU, the goal is to get it so that you could order this and build one for cheaper than you get. And you get a project. So, they say about an hour and a half or something to do the soldering. Learn a little more about soldering. You get to do a couple big rails in the center for the positive and negative. And it seems like a cool way to learn. There's video instructions for each version of the board that we have that you can figure out. So pretty cool.
So that's working out. 159 ZLT works out to $37. So that's working out. That specific one, I'm not sure. You'd have to do a real feature comparison.
Yeah, he goes through in the email. He went through some of the prices for each board.
I'm not sure that's cheaper than buying one here in the USA. Some of them can be had for about that price. I also noticed, I'm disappointed. I noticed he's using the little tiny polyfuses. I don't know the exact spec of that polyfuse, but on the JB board, we considered using those tiny polyfuses, but we found that some of them failed when we did a dead short, and we used the larger polyfuses. So that's a little disappointing. Are the SMD components pre-soldered, Blunty? Do you know?
No, I don't believe so. I think everything is something that you solder.
Oh, okay. You're gonna have to do.
He's got a video. Soldering. Yeah, we've got a video guide in the show notes as well. If you guys want to check that out, so you can see how the build process works.
It's a really cool idea, though, and especially if, like people say to me, when is a European distributor going to carry your parallel charge board? And I'm like, well, as soon as they order one. But by the time you pay for the board, then you pay VAT and shipping, it gets pretty expensive. I think this makes a lot of sense for people who just want a project, but especially for people in Europe who are going to save a lot on shipping. Shipping from, I guess, Zloty is Poland, right? Shipping from Poland. Pretty cool
little project.
Yeah. Wish you'd used bigger polyfuses, though. I'm sure you thought it through. All right, cool little project. That is Cleanbuild.eu, and there is a link in the show notes if you want to pick that up.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got the drone cinematic of the week.
Oh, whoops. Okay. Go.
And it is a pretty cool one. It's honestly so cool that I've got to complain about it.
Oh,
like,
wow.
If that makes sense. Like, I think the footage and the concept is so neat. I've got a little complaint, but otherwise it is amazing footage. Some of this footage I've never seen anybody take with the drone. He mentions very clearly that no animals or anybody was harmed in the making of this. He cares a lot about animals. He made sure to be as safe as possible, but some of these shots are just amazing shots that I think are really cool.
Yeah.
So my only complaint here
is go ahead.
I just want longer shots. This is this is kind of like a reel, and there's a lot of back and forth shots and cuts. I think some of these shots are so cool. I'd like to see a longer take of some of them. But very neat.
Yeah.
Very neat.
Yeah. So. Ooh. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's so good. Oh man, that's so good. I love that. That is really good.
Yeah. So shout out to Ellis Van Jason who made this video.
Beautiful.
Excellent cinematic FPV video in Namibia.
It is 4 minutes long, and in the interest of respecting his view count, we're going to leave a link to that down in the video description, and you can watch the whole thing. It is all that good. Really cool. Ellis Van Jansen is the creator, and there's a link down there.
That was
really
fantastic.
cool stuff. Yeah. All right, that is the drone cinematic of the week. And that brings us to... Oh, hang on. Why am I not... Oh, there we go. That brings us to... It's Barely News, a segment we do every week where we talk about things that weren't quite substantial enough to make a whole news item about, but stuff we thought was still worth sharing with you. And we're going to start with some Redcat. It's Barely New. We talked about, we can't leave them out. Our cast of characters. What's Redcat up to this week, Blunty?
So Redcat owns a company called Skypersonic. We've talked about a little bit. That's one of their subsidiaries. And Skypersonic is an inspection company who has recently signed a new inspection program deal for 2 years with General Motors. So that's good for them. They've got a solution where they can use the Skycopter that they have to capture information for their General Motors. It's pretty neat.
Crane rail inspections at all 19 of its North American stamping facilities. This is cool because what Skypersonic does is the remote telepresence, right? You can fly the drone remote. I'll give it one more second. It's a Comcast problem though, sadly. We are currently showing 0 dropped frames. Let's give the stream a chance to stabilize, and we'll try to finish. And if it goes down again, we'll just sign off. Sorry, guys. Comcast is really... I have business class Comcast. It's supposed to be better than this, and it usually is. But I don't know. They're having... I don't know what to say. Let's continue before it all dies. On to the next. It's Barely News. Redcat. I see this headline, Blunty. Redcat missed a mandatory meeting and gets put on the non-compliance list of NASDAQ. That sounds juicy.
Yeah, it does sound juicy. However, it doesn't... I don't think it's super juicy. But it does sound juicy. So this could lead to them being delisted from the NASDAQ if they don't follow the recommendations and do the right rules. But basically what they're supposed to do is get the shareholders together, announce a meeting, and have a shareholder meeting in the first year of being listed. And they didn't do that. So NASDAQ put them on a list, and they're like, hey, you got to figure this out. And in this, they explain that, hey, we got that notice, and we understand what the notice means, and we are working together with NASDAQ to make sure that we are in compliance. So they're going to make sure they have that meeting. So not super big news, but it sounds worse than it is.
We are collecting a we've had Fat Shark President, a joke YouTube account in the chat, and now we have Redcat President, a joke. We're collecting, and I'm here for it. I think it's hilarious. He says he was eating, and that's why he missed the meeting. He's going to explain it all.
Fair enough. Okay.
As long as you are funny and clever and not vile or offensive, I am absolutely okay with joke accounts being in the chat, just for the record.
All right.
Yeah.
You open this door. Okay.
I mean, if it gets too far, I'll shut it down. But for now,
Okay.
I'm entertained.
All right.
We got a new unlock procedure, Blunty, for DJI.
Yeah, so people have been doing fly-safe unlocks for a while, and that has been a mix of complicated and not complicated for process. Sometimes it is intuitive or not intuitive for people, there's different rules around it. So DJI has in some ways made it better and in some ways made it worse by putting it all on a centralized website called flysafe.dji.com. And now you can go essentially register with your DJI account on this website. Once you register on this website, then you'll be able to go in and do any unlocks that you would do all here. You basically put in all your information, make all your requests, make all your setups, list all your drones. You kind of do it all on the website. And then all that is available basically when you access your drone on the app. So let's say you authorize 10 flights in the next 20 days. You go on your Mini 3, you hit the button, they're all listed for you, and then they should automatically all be unlocked for you. So even if you lose internet or something, you can handle it all there. So it's a little different than the previous process. But in some ways, it seems to be easier. In some ways, it seems to be more difficult.
Yeah, how is it more difficult? How's it different?
I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe before you didn't have to have as much authorization, or some people could get easier authorizations. Now you have to go sign up for corporate accounts and stuff if you didn't. But basically, that's the way to do it now for the unlocks for DJI. So,
all right. Next up, the headline is how a total ban on Chinese drones could set back wildfire fighting in the U.S. USA. And my first thought when I saw this, Blunty, was there is no talk of a complete ban on the importation of Chinese drones, but there is talk about doing that for the federal government.
Yeah, and then state governments as well. So basically any
I see.
government entities. And so the concern is that if a ban like that totally went through, basically there's been advisement not to do it from certain parties. Certain government entities are not allowed to do it, but currently like a state government could order the drones. But they are currently worried that they're not going to be able to order DJI drones because unfortunately there's not a lot of good solutions, especially in their price ranges, to solve issues like wildfire management. And they're pointing out that like, the federal government, like the FBI, the CIA, have different use cases and different security restrictions for drones than someone like the LA Fire Department. And they shouldn't be under the same restrictions as a blanket ban on drones like that for government entities would not help anyone. It would just hinder their progress and their ability to do their job. So they're kind of like letting people know that and making that known. So,
yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a cost benefit analysis or risk benefit analysis. And when you say that you don't want actual service members flying DJI drones, well, you see what happened where DJI stopped. They stopped sales into Ukraine, for example, because of potential military use there. And I found myself asking, if DJI wanted, could they push a button back in their servers somewhere and make every DJI drone that's registered in Ukraine stop working? Yes or no, Blunty? What do you think? Like,
yes, if it reconnects to the internet. I mean, yes, they could.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think they could do that.
We know that they decide. Yeah, we know that already because they can decide when your drone's an NFC or not, and they could just submit a thing that. And we've also seen them lock the drones if they don't have the update before people have connected to the FlySafe app and they can't use their drone. They can't fly their drone without going and updating a thing that can't be back updated. So we know they have the ability to do that.
So if I am the United States military and I know that service members are officially or unofficially using DJI drones. And I'm worried that if someday it comes to a military conflict and that is something they've come to rely on, then suddenly China pushes the button and they lose that capability, and then their ability to do whatever they need to do is compromised because they just haven't. The tool they've come to rely on has been removed, and so it made sense to me when the military said, we don't want you guys using this stuff anymore, because in theory. You just got to think of these things. But like when you start coming down to like the United States Forest Service, I'm like, really? What are you actually worried about there?
Right.
What are you worried about there? Why not and then you're all the way down at the state level now with firefighters. It's like, why? What are you worried about there?
Yeah, I think that's part of the fear that they have is that, we're going to get caught by these regulations that, maybe have some basis in reality and are useful. And unfortunately, they're going to set back a lot of what they do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So, yeah, hopefully there's a way in between that. Hopefully there's not a blanket ban and they find a way to do that by group or whatever. But there was definitely a lot of talk of the blanket ban, especially during the last administration. So I don't know that this one's going to be any different.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that they're trying to promote American business, like the Skydios and Teals of the world. But they could also argue whether it's the government's place to pick winners in a market.
Well, Teal is trying to make enough drones to say, like basically they're, hey, we can make 500 drones. Can we sell them? There's a lot of these companies who aren't necessarily ready to produce orders.
Exactly.
And the prices of them based on the budgets that they're given are going to be really huge. Like if you consider like if I have to buy a $10,000 or $20,000 drone versus an $800 DJI drone, like I can only buy one versus 10. Like that's a huge difference for my for what I can do in my budget that I'm given. So.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, Blunty, and this is just it's barely news, so any real in-depth analysis is inappropriate. And I think what we're saying though is there's a lot of pros and cons and concerns here, and to simply say, oh, we're going to ban this, without thinking about what is the actual effect if you ban it. And then in the next year, there's like 3 more wildfires that you could have prevented because you banned it. Was that a good trade-off? And I think it's easy to just be like, well, let's ban the thing from the country that we hate. without actually doing the analysis. So, alrighty, moving on. F1 cars, drones.
Yeah.
Match made in heaven. F1 cars go 200 miles an hour. Drones go like 60, 70 miles an hour. What could go wrong?
Yeah. It turns out, if you don't have the right tools, then you probably aren't going to get the right footage. So this is an example of one of the shots. I think only a few shots were shown. And they were shown live. And unfortunately, there were a bunch of issues with the with the filming.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can see the issues right now.
Yeah, one is they were told they weren't allowed over the cars, so they weren't allowed to get on the track in any way.
Whoever this pilot and whoever this crew is did the absolute best that anyone could have done in this situation, and probably were given unrealistic reception of what it can actually be a really, really cool technology.
Yeah, that's why I say it's kind of odd that they chose to show these live shots. I think anybody who's doing the live production should have been clear that, like, oh, this is not going to work. We just won't show these. But maybe they felt the need to do that. Also, like anybody who would have been there before would have been prepared, who would have known the rules. There's a lot of things here we can see that this clearly wasn't the opportune situation for this. So hopefully we see some better versions of this in the future. This doesn't like ruin anything about the filming or perception. But I know a lot of people got surprised. The internet got mad about something. Can you believe it?
Yeah. I would say if you want to see some really good F1 drone footage, Johnny FPV's Red Bull F1 footage is amazing. Now, this was not during a live race. This was staged, and he was able to get close to the car, but they took a lot of time to prepare and figure out how to deal with the speed difference of the car and the drone. Like, Johnny was stationed at a slow corner, and he got some really, really cool shots. So, go, after this is over, look up Johnny FPV Red Bull F1, and there's some really cool stuff there. Do it better next time, F1. You could do this. It's okay. Lastly, don't show it. Right.
Yeah.
Lastly, our favorite topic for the news every time, Blunty. Dogs.
Yeah. Drones and dogs.
Hell yeah.
So we got to talk about Juno. This is a little bit of an ironic situation, and it's okay to joke about it because he was found. But we had a search and rescue dog who went missing, unfortunately, and had to be searched for himself. So Juno was an active search and rescue dog who was out on a walk with his family and got lost, and then lost for six days, unfortunately, in the Norfolk woods, and they were not able to find him. They had about 500,000 people on social media found out, and 85 people were out actively searching for this dog constantly. And it was spotted by a boat team that had a drone. And we're able to find the dog with the drone, and the boat team was able to get to the dog and rescue them because of the drone locating it. So, something I'll tell you, we've had a lot of these stories at this point, a lot of dogs being found by drones. And, I wouldn't have initially considered that it was that easy to find a dog, a small speck like that. But we've seen a lot of these stories, and I think that shows you that that's worth doing. If you have a lost animal or lost pet, it's worth getting out there with the drone and trying to find them, because this is, we're maybe double-digit numbers of these stories at this point.
Yeah, it's great. I would assume if you had a search and rescue dog go missing, you would get another search and rescue dog to find it. But I guess a drone.
Then you're going to be two search and rescue dogs lost.
Right.
Isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Like a horror movie where they split up. Right. We have to go find him. No, if you have I think what we've learned is that if you have dogs that are stranded and need to be fed, you drop food on them with a drone. If you have a dog that is stuck and needs to be led anywhere, dangle a sausage from a drone. I think the only thing we haven't heard of yet is a dog literally being like lifted to safety with a drone. An airlifted dog. If anybody knows any stories.
I think that's true. I don't think we've seen that yet. So.
Of an airlifted dog. Let us know. All righty. That brings us to the end of the news. But before we go, we're going to read the super chats. Not too many of them. Orange Jealous FPV, or as I like to call him, Orange Julius FPV. Thank you for a $2 super chat. HDMI in on the HDZero Goggles means you can hook your Xbox up to them. Yep. You sure as damn hell can. If you want to play Xbox with goggles, you sure as hell can. HDMI in means you can hook your laptop up to them and watch any video you want on a plane. You read into that what you mean. There are a lot of use for HDMI simulator. Yeah, HDZero Goggles, baby. JS, thank you for 449 pounds. I've yet to purchase a digital system, but I'm on the verge. The choice is now easy as HDZero looks good, and I'm disgusted by the DJI support leak of data to the Z Army. Alrighty, everybody makes their own decision. That's all I'm going to say about that topic. Oh, look. Well, we're close, Blunty. We're close. Hang on, I got to drag this over to the window I'm sharing with you. It does appear to be a dog being... Is this real? No, this isn't real, is it? That drone is hung from a wire. I don't know what's going on there. I don't think it's real. We're so close, though. Thank you for sharing that image, Mr. Fell. Lastly, Crease, thank you for a $2 super chat. Did anything end up connecting DJI Avata with Avatar? They got the Avatar goggle. We got the DJI Avata. Blunty, in all of your research and leaking and studying and sniffing and shaking the trees and, I don't know, listening to the ground and viewing the smoke signals, did anything come up about the Avata Avatar connection other than it's just a pure coincidence?
All that I know is I heard that DJI has used the name Avatar after Avata, but I don't have any like hard linkable evidence for that. I just have sources that have claimed that. We hopefully that'll come out at some point. But if that is the case, that would be interesting if the Avatar name was created after Avata. I'm not sure.
The products definitely don't, like when I first saw it, we didn't know. I didn't know what the DJI Avata was going to be. And I speculated that maybe the Avata Avatar meant that the goggles were sourced from DJI originally. I think currently the preponderance of evidence is that that is not the case. That this does not indicate anything about the origin of the goggles and seems like a coincidence.
Yeah.
So
we shall find out.
All right. That's all we got. All righty. Well, Blunty, once again, thank you, sir. We made it through the FPV news.
Yeah. Don't forget, go down there and hit that subscribe button. If it's red, it shouldn't be. It should be great because you're subscribed. Also, go down there and hit that bell, that notification, so you get to know when the FPV news is happening and all the other live streams and videos that Mr. JB puts up. Also, go visit the JB Clips channel. We'd appreciate that. That link is in the show notes, and we showed it at the beginning of the show. And we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on the Clips channel, Blunty. I got to say, I wanted a Clips channel because I knew that people who live stream have Clips channels, and I enjoy watching Clips channels for content creators who I like more than I like watching their streams a lot of the time. So I was like, I want to do this. And then I wasn't doing it because I just, for whatever reason, and you took it over and you've been doing a great job.
Yeah, I think we've had one negative comment and about 100 positive comments that said thank you for making a Clips channel. So I'm hoping people are enjoying the clips.
Well, there's always going to be some negative comments. That's linked down in the video description, of course. We will see you next week with more FPV news. But for now, that's going to do it. We are out of here.
Thanks, guys.